Scroungers.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 7th episode of Scroungers podcast. I am your host, Eyup Lovely, and I'm joined by Gay Wanker Magazine's Gay Wanker of the Year, runner-up.
Runner-up?
Hapless homo, yes.
Oh, I didn't find out. I honestly thought I was going to win that one.
The hapless homo, Jacob Venom Snake. Please say hello, Jacob.
Hello, everyone. Locked and loaded for episode... Is it 7? Yeah.
Put
7.
down the gun. Put down the gun. And I am additionally joined by fan favourite co-host Dave number 7. Dave, please say hello.
Hello.
There you go. That's Dave's contribution for the episode. Today, it's a bit of a macabre, a sombre affair. We wanted to spend an episode talking about the awful news over the weekend that Virginia Giuffre has died. Now, I doubt anyone listening to this was unaware of who Virginia Giuffre is, and I doubt even more that they're unaware now. But in case anyone doesn't know, and we will get into it in some quite significant detail, Virginia Giuffre was the woman who was groomed by Ghislaine Maxwell in the 2000s and trafficked to Prince Andrew by Jeffrey Epstein. She is the source of a very, very sizable amount of the information that we know about Epstein's trafficking network. We spoke about Virginia Giuffre a few weeks ago. She was traveling in a car, and a bus that was going 70 miles per hour had crashed into her car, and she was hospitalized. There's strange circumstances then, and we expressed as much. Her family said that they called the police, but they were told no one was available to come to the scene. When the bus crashed into her car, she posted on Instagram, I think this was about a month ago, saying that she had been given by doctors 4 days to live. Nearly a month later, she has died in what we are told is a suicide. Jacob and I recorded an episode quite extensively featuring Virginia Giuffre. I think it was like maybe the first or second episode, but we cut it all because we wanted to do a much larger episode on Peter Mandelson and that nexus. Because Virginia Giuffre she met Peter Mandelson at Jeffrey Epstein's house, and until a few days ago, she was one of the few living people who was not implicated in the trafficking network, who could attest to him being there, who could place him there, and also attest to the closeness of their relationship. But we ended up scrapping that. And we're going to try in an emergency fashion here, because it is seismic that Virginia Giuffre is dead, in the familiar refrain of an apparent suicide. We thought we'd get together, try and put down our thoughts and the surrounding context of how it interfaces with many of the things that we talk about on this show. The news cycle moves fast in this country, in all countries. There's a lot going on, and all journalists are idiots and crooks, so it's easy for something like this to happen, seismic though it is, and just melt into the stew of everything else. Over the weekend, it was the Pope's funeral. That is itself also quite massive.
I didn't even know he was
news.
sick.
These things can be overshadowed very, very quickly and swept away because of the endless cycle of chaos that is going on. And this is important to us. It's important to the things that we talk about on this show, and the corruption, the degeneracy, the perversion of the elites that govern not only our country, but all of the West and all of the private sector. And I'm not just talking about the Jews. It should go without saying that both Jacob and Dave as well, I greatly admire Virginia Giuffre. I think she is one of the most courageous, selfless people I've heard of. She went up against powers that be, the Lich Council, the beast. And it was royals, heads of states, banking executives, media tycoons, newspaper proprietors, entertainment chiefs. And she knew
of the world.
Yeah, the Dershowitz of the world. And she knew how powerful they were. And she knew, like everyone else, that if you go up against that cabal, bad things can certainly come of it. She saw the amount of people who have been offed or who have been apparent suicided when facing up against them. She knew the risks involved, and she sacrificed her own life before she even died, knowingly, willingly, in the hope that she may be able to prevent others from being abused, from being trafficked, from suffering so greatly like she did. There's no way that she didn't succeed in that. And It's just not possible. Her testimony alone has changed the face of the world. It changed the way everyone looks at the elites. It changed everyone's understanding of sex trafficking. Whether it's well-informed, misinformed, disinformed or not, everyone has an opinion or knows about or is appalled by the Epstein trafficking network. It is about as big a cultural event as could possibly happen. The sheer brazenness of the way that people were acting in the peak Epstein years, it really didn't seem as if they were trying to hide it at all. And that is long gone because her.
Even his quote unquote suicide felt like a deliberate peek behind the curtain, sort of like a taunting that it's like, look at what we can do, look at who we are.
What are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do about it? You're not going to do a fucking thing, are you? You got a glimpse into the Red Room, you saw the talking backwards Clintons, and you're going to do nothing about it.
All of these evils still exist, and they still exist with characters that are familiar and characters that are unknown. But at the very least, these people need to act with more secrecy. Now, they've been kicked back down in the hole. The world was better for having Virginia Giuffre, and it's worse for not having her. And undoubtedly, the bravery that she displayed in her very public testimony and the 20 years of her fighting all of the evil media on this, undoubtedly, I think, saved at least someone somewhere. And I'd bet that it's more than just one person. In Virginia Giuffre's honour, and hopefully with an approach that demonstrates the sincerity of our appreciation for her and our heartbreak for all of the other victims, we will today be covering Virginia Giuffre, the crux of her allegations, the media conspiracy to obfuscate and discredit her, and how that intersects with the current generation of Nazi perverts who govern every country in the world. Virginia Giuffre is from Sacramento, California, and she had a abusive childhood. She was in dangerous, erratic, violent homes, and she was molested by a family friend when she was a child and found herself running away, as a lot of abused children often do, and found herself then living in foster homes, as many abused children often do. Naturally, those environments, running away from home, often living on the street, under a bridge, and also the foster care system, those are also rife with child abuse. Child abusers explicitly seek out victims that have been abused. So if you are a visibly abused child in those situations, it is only just going to snowball, exacerbate, because they prey on the scent of the trauma. That is the first 16 or so years of Virginia Giuffre's life. It's not a particularly sunny upbringing. So when she was 16 and she started working at Mar-a-Lago, I believe, if anyone doesn't know, is owned by Donald Trump. She was, low down on the totem pole, about as low as you can get, an assistant in the spa. She would soon meet Ghislaine Maxwell, who began grooming her, and it looked to an abused young 16-year-old girl like that. The blue skies had arrived. This was a much more positive route forward. Obviously, it's difficult for us now to imagine Ghislaine Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein as being anything but monsters.
Yeah.
Especially to a young abused girl then. They seemed like saints. Maybe.
They would have come across as charming. I mean, that's
charming, but philanthropic.
I mean, even part of how like a lot of these like trafficking networks work, it's easy to think of it as like sort of a dark, sinister underworld of mafia organizations with girls in cages. But a lot of it will be at least sort of legitimate, semi-legitimate looking on the surface, whether it's like these kind of like, spa attendants, like employees at Mar-a-Lago, or whether it would be like even like modeling agencies or anything like that, where they sort of procure these more vulnerable girls in a way that feels kind of like honest. Like it doesn't, if you're 16, and especially if you're struggling, you're going to look at something like this as sort of like, oh yeah, this is my chance up, this is my way out, and you're going to cling on to that and seize it.
This is a young girl who her entire life has been treated as a consumable. And for the first time, Ghislaine Maxwell had immediately started showering her in love and affection and appreciation, and made her feel like she was special, like she was of note. She had a big life ahead of her, and this rich lady and all her rich friends have decided that I am so unique as to warrant them subsidizing her education and increasing her responsibilities at work, giving her money and gifts and whatever else. The complete aim is to just immediately give her a better life so that she associates them with that better life and becomes more into their thrall. And as we know, shortly thereafter, the grooming turned into abuse that turned into trafficking, I think is the best way to put it. Ghislaine Maxwell, I believe the first time that they met, offered her a job working for Jeffrey Epstein because she was reading a book about massage therapy. And the trafficking, the sexual abuse was disguised as them being masseuses. Famously, Virginia Giuffre gave Matt Groening, the Simpsons creator, a foot massage on.
Yeah, and apparently his feet were fucking minging.
Yeah, she said that his feet were completely rancid, just like yellow.
His mucky, dirty trotters.
Yeah. Obviously, there are power dynamics at play in that alone. If you are employing someone to quite literally wash the feet of your guests, it's a display of power. It's not necessarily imposing, and it's done with a smile, and she's paid for it. But it is to establish her own view of herself as being the bottom of the pecking order, and there at the grace of her new billionaire mummy and daddy.
I mean, it's like when she first arrived at his Epstein's Palm Beach residence, he was lying down naked and told by Maxwell to massage him and instructed her. Because they seem like nice people at that point, especially, with the opportunities they're supposedly giving her. Yeah. It's kind of in a sort of normal, against a semi-professional environment, especially in a sort of masseuse setting, as you say. I get these situations. I understand the psychology. When you feel like you've met someone like that you can trust, who's been kind to you, you start telling them more about your life and what you've been through, because you feel like, there we go, I finally got a friend. So she tells them the abuse that she went through as a kid, which is obviously not best thing she could have done, because they realize now, we've really got something that we can take advantage of here. We can know how to pull on those strings. This is someone who we can really manipulate and I guess, literally groom.
Like you said, they latched onto this. She wasn't just abused as a child, she was abused by a sex trafficker when she was 14 as well. So obviously she's just incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then, she'd be in Palm Beach, and then she'd go to Manhattan, and then the ranch in New Mexico, and then obviously Little St. James. And then it's kind of around the same time that she'd be introduced to all the other people she'd accused, like Alan Dershowitz and Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
And she describes the experience at that time as being passed around like a platter of fruit.
Yeah. By the time that she meets Ghislaine Maxwell, she has been molested by a close family member, as most child sexual abuse occurs. It's usually someone in that kind of proximity. But she has also been sexually assaulted in the context of being homeless. She's been sexually assaulted in the context of foster homes. And she has been sexually abused by a sex trafficker who also trafficked her. She had quite a portfolio of abuse that had been done onto her. It is morbid to discuss this. It's very sad. But I think it's important. It's very, very important that when you hear about some amorphous allegation of sexual assault, of sexual abuse, you should learn about the individual who is making the allegation, not so that you can scrutinize it, not so that you can believe them less. It's very important that, especially with Epstein, and I'm probably guilty of this, everyone's guilty of this to a degree. The Epstein stuff has just been memed to oblivion. It's hard not to. It's a cultural coping mechanism. But it's important to familiarize yourself with the fact that this is a real person. There's a real person who has suffered unbelievable amounts of pain, unbelievable amounts of hurt that has been inflicted onto her deliberately time and time and time again. And the apex abuse she suffered at the hands of this elite child sex trafficking network was just an extension of the rest of her life, which was characterized pretty much exclusively by abuse. Given how horrendous the crimes done unto her are, given how difficult her childhood was, to then, many years later, have the bravery, although reluctance at first, and we'll get into that, to have the bravery to actually say it publicly on the record with your name, it not only requires you to relive all of the pain and the trauma and the suffering that has been done to you, but it requires you to then become public enemy number one to a very, very powerful outfit of people. A powerful outfit of people who have influence over every single media organization, newspaper, TV channel, who have great influence over law enforcement, the security services, even as far as bankers or banking executives. Famously, I think it was the guy from Barclays, maybe, who was sending those messages about wanting a Snow White this evening or whatever. I can't remember the specifics on that, but she knew what she was taking on and she did it anyway. Testify and have to, in front of the world, on camera, effectively re-traumatize yourself. Because you then have to explain the abuse before, you have to explain the grooming by these people that have betrayed you, as well as abusing you, they've emotionally betrayed you. It is an incredibly sore subject. She has to feel those emotions in front of the world, clearly vulnerable, clearly hurting, while the most powerful monsters you can possibly conceive of are working night and day to intimidate her or to just outright kill her, but also to discredit her. And I think that is a multi-pronged response that they had.
I think there's one thing on top of that, on top of dealing with all of these incredibly powerful institutions and figures and organizations, is that it's like even just how many regular people will respond to it, where they will just dismiss it out hand. They will say that it's like, oh, you got to go around flying to all of these exotic places, giving nice things, shagging royalty and rich figures spoil, and now that you've passed your prime, you're going to fucking... Like, it's very easy for people just to go like, oh, you're just making it up, or you're doing it for attention or for publicity.
Yeah.
Which, would you do that? Would you put yourself on the global stage for what? What's the end goal here? Like, it's not fucking easy to keep a lie like that together. And what money are you getting out? Like, it's quite obscene. So not only has she had to live through that and obviously face the staring fucking eyes of these figures gazed upon her, she also will have to put up with the fact that there are people who are going to be like, fuck off, you're making it up, or you're just fucking doing it for attention.
It's important to place it in the new cultural moment that we're living through. I'd say most of the world found out about Virginia Giuffre's allegations probably around 2016. I think that's when the vast majority of people heard about it. That's when normal people heard about it. And it was under the context of Prince Andrew. In the succeeding years, we've had things like QAnon and its many other offshoots, its splintering, that was undoubtedly agitated by the state. You know, I said before that on Truth Social, Trump's social media app, the person running that was Kash Patel. He's now the head of the FBI. And he, on Truth Social, set up himself a verified Q account. He understands the power of Q because he created a fake Q account on Truth Social, and he knows how to wield it. The reason I bring that up is because the Epstein stuff has been memed until it is completely unrecognizable from reality. As I always talk about, there is that fake list of Little St. James or attendees that includes Callum Hudson-Odoi, a footballer who was, born in like 2000. And that list is just and that is widely disseminated. Millions of people will have seen that. I get sent that by normal people. Saying, can you believe that Tom Hanks and Callum Hudson-Odoi and Mikel Arteta, and it's just all these random people, is actually the chronological list of all famous people who got COVID, which is why I think Tom Hanks is one of the earliest names on there. But all of that is to say that Virginia Giuffre has been used in these QAnon adjacent sectors. They would post a picture and say that she said things that she hasn't. QAnon very explicitly exploits the Epstein stuff to exonerate Donald Trump, RFK, any right-wing figure from their links to it.
And to muddy the waters, like it's like to associate this kind of thing as well with insane crank conspiracy, crackhead fucking far right. I mean, there's a lot of very suspicious federal and government connections with QAnon, Roger Stone, and a lot of like clued up people who were advancing it early on and getting it off the ground. Yeah. Again, lots of very suspicious connections.
Michael Flynn is a big amplifier of QAnon. He was Trump's national security advisor. He was senior in the United States Army. I think he was lieutenant general or something. He had to resign very, very early on in the first Trump administration. Nonetheless, he's a powerful voice, and on the right, a credible voice. And he amplifies all of the QAnon bullshit about this. And the QAnon right-wing crank take is that it implicates precisely everyone who is a political enemy of Donald Trump and doesn't implicate anyone who is a friend of Donald Trump, including Donald Trump himself. So they will sooner tell you that Ellen DeGeneres was there than RFK Jr. was there, or that any Republican right-wing figure, advisor was remotely involved. This was a bipartisan child sex trafficking ring. Politics behind closed doors is all the reds and the blues yucking it up, patting each other on the back, shaking hands, because they're not really enemies at all. That's why you can have Bill Clinton and Donald Trump at the same child sex trafficking dinner, because they don't actually have any differences. The existence of these new conspiracy, agitation, obfuscation groups, like all the QAnon splinters, is to try and make it a partisan thing so that they can depict every liberal in America, in the American political environment, as a degenerate pervert, Satanist, child sacrificer. I have no doubt that people like Ellen DeGeneres, who is good friends with George W. Bush, or Tom Hanks, who makes all the CIA movies, I have no doubt that they are bad people. But
for Forrest Gump alone, he should probably be shot.
Yeah. Well, they should have extended Forrest Gump a few years. Or maybe they should make a sequel where he goes to Little St. James.
I thought you were going to say when he visits the World Trade Center 2001.
This is the sincere and earnest and deep and ghastly, demonic suffering and abuse of a child, and it is used by these people to implicate the enemies. If you ask a normal person who you don't know on Twitter, if you ask a normal person in the street about the Epstein Island, they'll say, "Oh yeah, they were all there." Tom Hanks, and I think immediately they would say someone like Tom Hanks who wasn't there, and that is the pop culture understanding of the issue, and it serves only to dilute the blame of the people who were there, the blame of people who were involved, privy to it at least, but quite likely engaged in it. Dave said, when Virginia Giuffre, when she worked as a massage therapist, a traveling massage therapist for Epstein, she was trafficked to Epstein himself, Alan Dershowitz, Jean-Luc Brunel, who killed himself in prison a few years ago, killed himself in custody, Prince Andrew, obviously, as we've said, and the governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson. I would encourage any of our listeners to Google Bill Richardson confronted about Bohemian Grove on YouTube. And evidently he went to Bohemian Grove at some point, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is a conservative sort of woodland getaway that has been memed by the right wing into the apex child sacrifice zone. And all the political elites have always been there. Nixon famously on the tapes
is the faggotiest thing.
Yeah, the faggiest thing he's ever seen. He says they're all limp-wristed. It's a powerful engagement. Reagan went, Nixon went, a lot of people went, and they do have a very strange ceremony at the start involving burning an owl statue, an owl effigy. And the right wing, Alex Jones broke in with John Ronson and filmed. The right wing all incorrectly cite this as the base of whatever this child sex trafficking ring, where it operates out of, or at least where they do their pagan rituals. This channel, I don't know much about the channel. I think they are lunatics. There's one where they confront Tony Blair, and it's fucking hilarious about going to the Bilderberg thing. Tony Blair, he just shits himself. He initially thinks that they're friends, and he goes, the Bilderberg group? Oh, yeah, it's a really useful thing, actually. And then he just shits himself when they start questioning him. But the person who Virginia Giuffre was trafficked to, Bill Richardson, the former governor of New Mexico, I think, he's got a group of, like a press pool around him, and they're all asking questions, and they just keep shouting questions about Bohemian Grove. The sweat that starts coming, if you watch it from the moment that they start asking the question to the end of the video, It is like watching someone who has just had a shower. He's just got these massive balls of sweat just shitting out of his face. It is incredible. But aside from that small moment of levity, in the mid-2000s, early 2000s, I think, Giuffre flew, I believe, subsidized by Ghislaine Maxwell to Thailand to train as a masseuse. While she was there, she had been given directive by Maxwell to meet a specific Thai girl to bring back to America for Epstein. And I think this is a methodology that they use quite often. There are other women who have said the same, which is that they were typically groomed by Maxwell, I think, almost maternally, and then it progressed for some to an almost romantic grooming, and then a sexual grooming. Maxwell is accused in some instances of sexually abusing these women themselves, but also sexually abusing them in group sex context. But while Virginia Giuffre was at the school, she met her future husband, Robert Giuffre. Her previous name was Virginia Roberts. It is sort of divided down the coverage because half of the publications refer to her as Virginia Roberts, half refer to her as Virginia Giuffre. And after she started her relationship with Robert Giuffre, contacted Epstein and said she's not coming back. And I believe until her death, she lived in Australia, where she had effectively just started a new life. It seemed like she at least had some internal, personal harmony, more peace. I'm sure it was a nightmare living in America. In any part of America, it would have been a nightmare living in Britain. Australia, very large, remote, distant. And it would be a few years before any police department anywhere started investigating Epstein for this. In 2005, a 14-year-old girl and her parents reported Jeffrey Epstein's behavior because he had done unto this girl what he had done, or what they had done to Virginia. He had used one of the girls that he had already groomed to groom her. They procure girls to procure girls. This is somewhat the reason that there are a relatively finite amount of women publicly on the record talking about their experiences being trafficked, because their experiences being abused and trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein also encompassed them trafficking other young girls, because they were effectively, they were groomed, they were brainwashed. That does not excuse procuring more girls whatsoever, but it's a very, very necessary piece of context. And it seems almost baked in, intentional. They are, in the midst of abusing them, implicating them in the crime, disincentivizes them from reporting it or from giving any kind of added testimony whatsoever. This girl in 2005, this 14-year-old girl, had gone missing, I think. The parents were concerned about her going over as often as she was. She had been given money, and they had questions about that. They found out it was Epstein who was molesting the girl. They went to the police, and the police told them that they had already a list of other girls and their parents who had called them about the same thing happening to their daughter. Probably likely some sons. There are a few male victims of Epstein who have sued him or sued the estate in civil court since. This is because it is not just to satisfy the perversions of Jeffrey Epstein, and it is not just to satisfy the perversions of Ghislaine Maxwell, and it is not just to satisfy the perversions of heterosexual males. It is to satisfy the perversions and gain compromising material on anyone with power and influence. That's why there is such a smorgasbord of people from all industry. As long as you are senior in a sector, you're invited. As such, a few years down the line, when the police had slowly gone through all of these police reports, they got in contact with Virginia Giuffre living a new life in Australia. Just before that, circling the wagon, she got contact from first Ghislaine Maxwell, then Jeffrey Epstein, both asking if she had spoken to the authorities. At which point the FBI started calling. I assume the FBI just saw that ping, Jeffrey Epstein just called one of the victims. We better fucking call her then. Virginia Giuffre was hesitant to speak to them, as I imagine I would be, as I imagine anyone would be. Especially given it is now a few years into her new life, and this will have been the first time that she has had stability, fulfillment, and been as far away as possible from abusers. She didn't want to shatter that. She had finally escaped, and she wasn't going back. But since she was getting pestered repeatedly about it, and then ultimately, some months later, contacted by the Australian Federal Police, and obviously non-cooperation with anything like that could lead to complications with her citizenship, her visa. So she cooperated. One of the things that she told them, as before, was that she had been abused by Alan Dershowitz. In response to the growing legal complaints, criminal complaints against Jeffrey Epstein, he hired a team of lawyers, including Alan Dershowitz, which is
I don't think there's a bigger marker of guilt than hiring Alan Day.
No, of course.
The guy, he's been there for
there is no pedo nonce on earth that he hasn't defended.
Whatever Nazi warlock put a curse on a Disturmer magazine and brought Alan Dershowitz to life, God damn him. We're going to be haunted by that fucking ghoul for years to come yet.
Don't we have Alan Dershowitz's number? We should call him sometime.
Oh, yeah. We should definitely call him.
Alan Dershowitz, again, if anyone listening doesn't know, he's represented every monster on earth in every insane case. OJ, Johnny Cochran, F. Lee Bailey. He was part of the core of that. Recently, defended Harvey Weinstein. He defended Trump in his first impeachment. Obviously, Epstein in the first case we were talking about, in which he secures a outcome that is very curious indeed. And basically, if you are accused of being one of history's greatest monsters, if you're accused of being a rapist or a paedophile, or indeed of stabbing your ex-wife to death, Alan Dershowitz is there.
Alan Dershowitz might know something about murdering wives.
Alan Dershowitz, it would be many years before allegation that Alan Dershowitz specifically abused Virginia Giuffre. It was many years before that was in the public domain. I believe his excuse
I do think we need to give...
He kept his pants on the whole time, he said. and he couldn't have done it because his wife was there. And she wouldn't like it. It's like, my wife, I couldn't cheat in front of my wife.
At least wait until she's...
It's not infidelity. You're raping a child. It's not just you being unfaithful to your wife. It transcends. Your wife being there is of no relevance whatsoever. She's clearly in a marriage with someone who is very obviously a paedophile, who very obviously molests children.
Maybe the most obvious paedophile, second only to Savile.
She has no issue whatsoever with that. Is the implication that if she was there and he did it, she would be offended that he was unfaithful to her?
Maybe it's like a Camilla Soprano thing where it's like, I know you'd do it, just have the decency not to do it in front of me.
Yeah, that is quite possibly what he meant.
Alan Dershowitz on Twitter. Again, I'm sure everyone listening has seen his hideous fucking mug. His mouth and row of teeth that look like a Toby jug filled with piss.
He is disgusting.
It's repulsive and like grotesque in a way that kind of like defies human comprehension. But what's really delightful, when he goes on Twitter, he's like, I don't know what the fuck it is, whether it's like his live streams or his Substack, whatever, where he writes some awful shit. And because he's a stupid old bastard, he puts his like a close-up of his face as like the thumbnail preview or whatever. And it's like 4K, perfect like lighting, at the worst angle close-up of his horrible fucking face. I'm saying this, like, trying to put it down, it actually is maybe the sexiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
When you can see the sort of like rotten vulva in his neck folds.
Oh. Yeah, it's disgusting.
It's awful.
It should
Every time at a different angle, he's like moist and sweaty, like all like ham in a fridge, like the wafer thin ham that's been left there for too long, it's starting to go green. Ugh.
It should also be mentioned Alan Dershowitz is a very famous Zionist, and Alan Dershowitz, he loves doing a rebuttal. Led to a debate with Norman Finkelstein where he gets the shit kicked out of him. Alan Dershowitz wrote a book called The Case for Israel. Finkelstein said that it was plagiarism, that he had plagiarized John Peters' book from time immemorial. Obviously, Norm Finkelstein is much smarter than Alan Dershowitz, and he destroys him in the debate, and that's why they've never been in a room together since, I guess.
Alan got him basically blacklisted from academia. He made it his life's goal to ruin his life.
The research assistant, Alan Dershowitz, research assistant on the case for Israel, I believe, is Natalie Portman, actress Natalie Portman, under her birth name, which is something
literally like Natalie Hirschlager or something. I don't know why she changed it, because it's kind of like...
Yeah, Portman, is that a non-Jewish name? I don't know. Is she trying to hide that? I don't know. It literally is Hirschlager. I thought you were just being anti-Semitic.
No. Remember, we're talking about Israeli names here. We're talking about the place with Shloim Zayantz, Vile Shlomo.
Yeah, Shlomo Zionons, and
Flem Schmegma Board.
What was that guy? Something Wankman or something.
Omer Wankert.
Omer Wankert.
What's really funny about this is that they're all ostensibly, I don't know if you talk to any of them or listen to how they speak, you wouldn't believe this, but they are taught English as a first language next to Hebrew. So in English, they know what these names sound like, and they're going around calling themselves
half of them
Nimrod.
have fucking Brooklyn accents. It's not like they don't understand, but you still call you some Ram Fartman. Fucking come on. But then that is an aside. It's perhaps not so relevant to the main topic.
I do like the contrast between Norm Finkelstein and this sort of like mensch, sort of like ideal like Jewish superhero. Even right down to his looks, he's like Jewishly handsome, if that makes sense. When you get like Elliot Gould or something like that. And then Dershowitz genuinely looks like a Nazi caricature. You listen to him, or like,
and his voice as well. His voice is like an anti-Semitic
there must be a reason why. I know Felix has said this. Like Tucker Carlson brings Dershowitz onto his show to make his audience anti-Semitic, because like a lot of these are like rural bumfuck nowhere fucking old people. They've never interacted with like a Jewish person in New York or Los Angeles. That's their only exposure to them, and they think, what the fuck?
Because Dershowitz is such a repulsive personality, it is very odd when you see people who do like and support him. It's like, oh, this guy's a boss, man. He wins all the cases. It's just like this. He's the most pathetic man alive. He's terrible for a lawyer. He's terrible at lying. He's terrible at his excuses.
And again, very litigious, I want to stress.
Extremely litigious. Extremely
let me emphasize that he did murder his first wife.
Yeah.
Alan, come and get me, you sack of shit.
And Alan Dershowitz, I mean, fucking sue me, mate. You take me to court right now for saying that you are a
shit out of my
paedophile.
ass, you fucking slimy nonce.
I'll say this now. It is mathematically impossible that Alan Dershowitz isn't a paedophile. It is absolutely, verifiably, certifiably true. And if anyone wants to DM me, I'll give you my full name, my fucking address. I'll give you the deed to my fucking house. Take me to court right now. To go back to Virginia Giuffre, we're somewhere in 2007-6. Epstein hires Alan Dershowitz to lead his legal team. The South Florida U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta refused to prosecute Epstein in federal court and sent it back to local jurisdiction. Now, this is
Acosta future, was it Secretary of Labour or?
Yeah, he had to resign directly because
I think he's the one with like his family, like his kids are the ugliest fucking goblins I've ever seen. Like the whole thing looks very like Shadow of Innsmouth type thing.
The detectives have since said they were trying to pursue Epstein. I don't doubt they were local police. They probably feel like they could give them a lot of breathing room elsewhere if they could take down a incredibly wealthy and powerful person. And they're also, local police, they're idiots. So they massively overestimate their power. But they say that as soon as Epstein hired Dershowitz, things took a turn. The Epstein defense team were classic Dershowitz style, incredibly aggressive and inflammatory, accusatory. The point is to just flood the opponent with such nonsense, so much doubt, and so much deep digging into their life to bring up as much irrelevant nonsense as possible, try and discredit the character, and to just do it all day, every day.
Just intimidate and harass.
Yeah. They were in negotiations with Alexander Acosta, South Florida U.S. attorney at the time. It's a point of much contention in the Epstein chronology because it was a major thing many years later when Alexander Acosta worked in the Trump administration, but also because they cut Epstein the sweetest of sweetheart deals.
Yeah.
It was like a fake fucking sentence.
He could literally leave prison when he liked and just go home, couldn't he?
Yeah.
All right, boys, just clocking out. See you later. I'll be back soon.
It was like he had to go to social club for some hours a day. When he had to go to prison, they moved the bed from his house in there, I think. When he was allowed to leave prison, seemingly just during the day, there was very, very limited restrictions on what he could do. He undoubtedly was still abusing children during this time. And it is one of those inexplicable deals. Alexander Acosta later said that he had been told, what is the exact wording? Let's see.
So what they did, they took it to a grand jury.
Yeah.
Which is sort of, seems to be the classic way of railroading cases like this. I think that's how, with the Franklin scandal, they ended up prosecuting the victims as opposed to the people who are actually accused.
For the listeners, and I would like you to continue, Dave.
Yeah.
During the Franklin Credit Union scandal wherein children were being trafficked in America, there was an extensive documentary done about it by Yorkshire Television. The documentary by Yorkshire Television was on the ground. You can see a poor VHS quality version of it on the internet. The day before that was supposed to air, they just didn't air it. Ultimately, in that case, they had victims testify under oath that they were sexually abused. Then they prosecuted the victims for perjury, lying under oath, things like that. A lot of these victims ended up in prison, and a lot of them ended up in these incredibly harsh sentences. For some reason, some of them were in solitary confinement. I believe Nick Bryant met a good few of them years later. He described them as obviously all very damaged, traumatized by it. Maintain that they are telling the truth because they obviously are. But they have had lives of misery as a consequence of that. Go on, Dave.
Yeah, so as you said, Epstein's legal team was incredibly aggressive when negotiating with Acosta. And when they signed it, they never informed the victims, which they later found to be illegal. But Epstein and all the accused co-conspirators, named or unnamed, were granted immunity from any federal charges. All named and unnamed.
I just wanted to hone in on all named and unnamed. That is the important part here. But I don't know how or if this would hold up. Alan Dershowitz negotiated the all named and unnamed co-conspirators. So that means anyone who is under the jurisdiction of that. I don't know what the word would be.
Well, it's federal. It's federal, so generally, really, they can't be tried outside.
But Alex Acosta, it was the South Florida U.S. attorney. I don't know. If it applies federally, right, that would mean that anyone who has ever been trafficked children or helped Jeffrey Epstein traffic children would be immune. And obviously, we have seen people be prosecuted for this since. So I don't know whether that would hold up, certainly today, with all of the media and the fury around it. But obviously, Alan Dershowitz negotiated that clause because he is, at that point, unnamed co-conspirator.
And so when Acosta, probably many years later, was asked why he gave him such a generous and lenient deal, he said it was because he was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and that this was above his pay grade and that he should leave it alone.
Sort of consensus that Jeffrey Epstein was the Mossad. He was an agent of the Mossad. In no small part because Robert Maxwell was a literal spy for the Mossad, buried in Israel, these types of things. Ghislaine Maxwell was clearly Mossad as well. Epstein's career is sort of inexplicable if he isn't Mossad. His wealth is sort of inexplicable outside of that. It's likely that he was Les Wexner's bagman. Les Wexner clearly involved in some capacity with the Mossad as well. The relationship between the US and Israel is contentious whether one controls the other. I would say it's symbiotic. I think you can broadly say that the CIA's aims and the Mossad's aims mostly align.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a lot of collaboration between the two. if you are an agent of the Mossad in America doing child sex trafficking, then you are not prosecuted because the CIA is friends with the Mossad, and thus the US state won't prosecute what it effectively sees as one of its own. And I think this came back to bite them quite heavily.
Yeah, so their interests ran parallel until I'm guessing they've realised now just how far Israel might have been willing to go to sort of
sexually blackmail them all.
Secure its own interests. Yeah.
Again, I can't prove this. No one can prove this, but it would be my understanding from all of the reading that I've done on this that Jeffrey Epstein was running a blackmail child sex trafficking ring for the Mossad, and obviously they seized countless DVDs from his home that I've never heard anything about since that contained famous people's names plus girl plus 14 years or whatever. And it was clearly the names of the figures he was trafficking children to, plus the name of the child that he trafficked to them, plus their age. And it is also noted in every fucking piece about Jeffrey Epstein's life prior to any of the legal cases that he had, his house was absolutely fucking stacked to the teeth with CCTV cameras. It was like a fucking security compound. Clearly, as we love to accuse Russia of doing, he was trafficking children to incredibly powerful, influential figures, recording it and using it, though perhaps not in all cases, just as a sort of a backup, something up their sleeve to keep them in line. This is not a uniquely Israeli thing. The CIA is kind of the pioneer of this thing. In the 50s, the 60s, they were constantly trying to have foreign dignitaries, foreign world leaders, certainly those that were against US imperialism or were anti-colonial in nature, to sleep with prostitutes. And
what was it? Something like Operation Midnight Climax, it was called. Like names like that. Even sort of like MK Ultra were some of the victims that they were doing their little fun experiments on. Some of them were children. And
Midnight Climax was subsidiary to MK Ultra, I think.
Yeah.
That was seeking, like the rest of MK Ultra, to see if under the influence of drugs and in a sexual scenario, whether people were more open and spoke freely and without restraint, whether they were disarmed by that. And I don't know if that factors in, because they clearly, not only are they getting footage of them having sex with children, but it's quite likely that in this disarmed state, they divulge things they wouldn't otherwise divulge to other people. I don't doubt that Prince Andrew's got a big fucking mouth. I don't doubt that in those sexual contexts, and I believe Virginia Giuffre writes as much in her unpublished memoir, that he did just seemingly recklessly, endlessly divulge what appeared to be, proprietary information, protected information, secrets to some capacity. The CIA in the 50s, 60s, they love to do this shit. All countries love to do this shit. The most fucking referenced article on this show is the Politico article from 2 years ago now, maybe, talking about cross-party MPs in the UK House of Commons going on all-party parliamentary trips abroad. It's a grouping within the parliament that nominally are friends of a foreign nation. The foreign nation often subsidises them going on holiday there. But as Politico reports, certainly if it is a autocratic regime or if it is a country with loose or non-existent age of consent laws, they get there and they are provided with children who are being trafficked. Talks about one Labour MP with a taste for young Russian girls. They are aware of this and they do it anyway. And there's also no way that these MPs are also fucking stupid or haven't been warned by the security services that something like that involves foreign governments getting blackmail on you. They just don't care.
No, they don't give a shit.
They're already being bought off in those contexts. They've already sold their parliamentary behaviours to a foreign nation. They will sell it piecemeal and to different interests and to different states. But they have no fear of ever having the footage of them sexually compromised being in the public domain, because they are never going to betray their master. Jeffrey Epstein, he did... How long did he do the first time?
I think he was supposed to do 18 months, but I doubt he did all of it.
Yeah.
He was supposed to do 18.
He got out on good behaviour.
I think after his first stint in prison, which obviously was a fucking complete joke of a sentence. It was a fake sentence anyway. He was in prison for literally some months, and he could do fucking work release all day and whatever else. And then it disappeared from his life because Jeffrey Epstein at that time is not in the public domain known for proximity to Bill Clinton or Donald Trump or any of these people. He's not famous himself. He has a very limited biography. He's sometimes featured in the New York gossip rags.
There was one of those tacky sort of like TV shows that you get more in America that you'd expect to see on the TV in Grand Theft Auto, where it's sort of like wanking over like random rich people, like very obscure characters, like real trash TV when you're like probably just nodding off on heroin.
Yeah.
That you just blast on the back of in the background, and he like pops up like Jeffrey Epstein, and it's this commentator with this fucking annoying voice. It's done the rounds on Twitter a few times, talking about sort of like, here's Jeff at his fancy house in Malibu, Florida, and da 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 da. And it's like, here he is flying his private plane, where he has Bill Clinton and the guy from Rush Hour flying with him.
I think that was a show about, it's one of these fucking trash TV shows about Giga Chad rich men from the public domain. Like, this guy's made this much money and he has this awesome private plane he calls the Lolita Express for reasons we are not sure. Aside from these small trivial media items about him and his presence in the New York gossip rags, which it should be noted, Donald Trump loved to call up all of these rags and it's speaking in his very identifiable voice. There are recordings out there of him calling up these things. He claims that he is someone called John Barron, which he later named his son. That was his pseudonym. And he's calling them up in his extremely identifiable voice, just feeding them this horse shit about these parties. He'll doubtless have done it about the Epstein ones. They always just end with, Trump was surrounded by some of the most gorgeous women alive, and they were all over him, you know, and it's just nonsense. Clearly,
I've read so many of those over the years that I'm not even sure which ones I've dreamt. I swear there was one about him like in his limo after a fancy pie where it's like, hey, those guys are mugging those people over there. And he gets out and he chases them away.
Yeah, I've read that one. This is a thing that is done worldwide where individuals in the public domain, celebrities, public figures will call up the media and it will be attributed to one of their friends. A friend of X said this. Famously, well, not fucking famously at all. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is something only I saw. Channel 4's Kathy Newman, who has covered the Epstein and Prince Andrew thing as well. When John Prescott, former Deputy Prime Minister, died, she tweeted what she thought was like a cute story. And she said, John Prescott had called up the newsroom and gave us something to publish. And as is the case in the media, she writes, we attributed it to friends of John Prescott. It's like, you're not supposed to just admit that. British journalists are just so crooked that they don't understand that. The rest of the world understands that. All the other
they don't even understand their role as client journalists. Like,
you're supposed to be a client journalist. You're supposed to be discreet about it. But for some reason, she just openly admits that. In a just
Peter
world,
Prescott, though, no one could net back a pint like he could.
Yeah, but still Iraq.
Yeah, that big one.
And he loved cheating on his wife, like another senior Labour figure that followed.
It's a classic Labour tradition, that actually, isn't it?
In 2011, the Mail on Sunday published the first real substantive mainstream article about Epstein trafficking Virginia Giuffre, specifically to Prince Andrew, and that was the prism through which it was reported. And I think that it stayed that way for some time until 2015. In 2015, there was a big Daily Mail article and a big Vanity Fair article as well, which was very substantial. After the Vanity Fair article, the US media started reporting it quite widely. That was still through the prism of Prince Andrew, but obviously the American reader has other figures in that orbit that pull them in more. And perhaps they are more familiar even prospectively with Jeffrey Epstein through the initial arrest. And Jeffrey Epstein was a figure of speculation on a lot of the conspiracy areas of the internet. In 2015, when the Vanity Fair article came out, James Ball published it in The Guardian, which was also a very big piece. James Ball, for the listener, is the worst journalist in existence. He is the stupidest bastard to ever live. James Ball has since repeatedly claimed that he broke the Epstein story. At least 5 years after the first mainstream article. Also, in the first few lines of James Ball's article, he explicitly begins just referencing the Vanity Fair article. So in no possible way did James Ball fucking break this story. Audiences might remember him as the guy who tweeted after October 7th, "I'm occasionally taken to be Jewish, and I wonder whether that was why I was pressed on this. I'd like to be able to go to my local pub, and more importantly, would like my Jewish friends and neighbours to feel able to do so without interrogation." He's the first non-Jewish victim of anti-Semitism. Again, a disgusting, stupid bastard. He writes all these dogshit books that nobody reads, and he's the editor of the New European, which is a completely fake newspaper about the European Union. Last year or something, or the year before, he wrote in a piece in the Sunday Times about how he used to be a racist 4chan, 8chan troll. It was before Groypers, but these far-right troll behaviours that he was doing. He was admitting to doing. Because 8chan was founded in 2013 when he was 27, when he was a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, he claims he was doing this. And nobody fucking cared. It's written as like a story of great, admirable growth.
Yeah, he says when Rick Rowling stopped being funny enough, we would instead...
Rick Rowling stopped being fucking funny enough. Like, what is he on about? In fucking 2013?
Yeah.
He was Rick Rowling people in 2012.
We would instead ambush users with hardcore pornography and later grotesque violent videos. We would go further and further to chase the same heights. Where do you go from there? What did he mean by that? Because there's only really one...
At the age of 27, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, he claims that he was using 8chan, a website that is delisted from Google for hosting so much child porn. And he was doing it to target ethnic minorities with snuff films and hardcore fetish porn because Rick Rowling wasn't funny anymore.
Is he going to later claim he brought the Peter Scully story because he was sending his videos to people?
This is all beside the point. I just have a lot of personal grievances with James Ball.
I think one last thing worth mentioning with him, at least in terms of his delightfully disgusting character, is you discovered that it might have been on the New European when they've got like the profile pictures of each columnist and writer.
You can go to the end. You can go to the end of the URL, and usually at some point it'll have a question mark, and thereafter it is stipulating the quality. So if you delete all of that, you can get the raw image file, and it's fucking, some of them are like fucking 30 fucking megabytes. And you click and zoom in on the one from that article, and James Ball is the most dandruff any man has ever had.
Igloos of dandruff.
He's clearly filthy, and he knew he was fucking doing a photo shoot that day. And when I posted that, I got multiple messages from 4 different people who say he fucking stinks in real life. It was described as the smell of, like, when you leave your clothes in the washer too long. He smelled like damp clothes and, like, horrific sweat. Fucking hair is just absolutely shit full of dandruff. And he posts on Twitter some of the most fucking banal, depressing, it's hideous the things he posts. A couple of months ago he posted that he'd been using the same feeder for his cats for 15 years, where he just puts food in it. He dumps a load of food in it. And he has his cats just fucking scratch out of it all day, and it broke. And he couldn't find a new one. It had like fucking 10,000 views and 3 likes. I just replied saying, James, you are fucking pathetic. Do you know that your life is miserable? He denies the fucking 8chan thing, even though I posted directly from an article that he wrote in a fucking nationally syndicated broadsheet newspaper. Well, all of that is tertiary to the main narrative here. The point being, in the public consciousness, Epstein first arrived in the mainstream media properly in 2015, 2016. Consequence of a 2014 court filing where Virginia Giuffre submitted quite extensive, I think it's transcribed testimony of her abuse by Prince Andrew, but also, and I'm not sure if this was requested by the oppositional lawyers, but they, I guess, subpoenaed a manuscript that Virginia Giuffre wrote for a memoir. I think it's something like 150 pages. You can read it online, and later a publishing house paid $2.5 million for the manuscript. That will never, ever come out. It's called Billionaire's Playboy Club. In that is where she details infancy of a relationship with Epstein and Maxwell and a lot of the encounters that she had with Prince Andrew. I'll read this very small extract. I already knew what he was here for, at least why I was called down to the study. Prince Andrew had that notorious cheesy grin slapped over his face as he looked me up and down like a shiny new car on display, and he was about to take it for a test drive. Ghislaine led me to the decadent sofa he was lounging on and twirled me around, gave him a good look over before sitting me down on his lap. Like a show pony, I knew exactly how they wanted me to be paraded around, with the last of my dignity long lost. I had nothing more to lose. It was easy to give them the reaction they desired. All I had to do was pretend to be entertained by their lewd gestures, and when Andrew cupped my breast with a doll made in his image, I only giggled away. Ghislaine wanted to take a picture of the bizarre scene and even got Johanna, another of Jeffrey's so-called personal assistants, to come and sit on his other knee for the snapshot, giving the impression girls couldn't stay away from Randy Andy. Many crude jokes later, I was asked to show Andrew to the upstairs massage room. The doll that Giuffre references there is the doll used to depict Prince Andrew in Spitting Image that I believe they'd bought anonymously at an auction, if any Americans are unaware. Certainly through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, Prince Andrew was known as something of, not a tomcat, but more of a womanizer, a ladies' man, Randy Andy, that the women were magnetically attracted to him. And hence why they will have bought that doll. This is a recurring thing, and it's certainly a recurring thing in celebrity child abuse cases in the grooming cycle. Michael Jackson, according to numerous accusers, would show the episode that he did of The Simpsons. He would show the Weird Al parodies. If you are a powerful celebrity public figure paedophile, grooming children often encompasses invoking, musing representations of them and depictions of them in popular culture that they might be familiar with. There is no doubt in my mind that they literally bought that doll for that exact purpose. It's not an accident it was placed there at that time. They're trying to get them starstruck, basically. In the 2014 court filing, she details in written testimony how she was trafficked by Epstein to Prince Andrew at least 3 times when she was 17, and that she was taken to, is it Tramps in London, which I guess is a famous fucking elite nightclub. Andrew mentions it in the Emily Maitlis interview a bunch of times in one of his ridiculous lies. She went there, met Andrew, and was instructed by Ghislaine Maxwell to do for Andrew what you do for Epstein. This is like the kind of methodology of close family member paedophiles to a literal toddler or a child. It's like horrifically calculated, depraved. There is premeditation to the way that both Maxwell and Epstein act. All of these things that might appear incidental, certainly to Virginia Giuffre at the time, are undoubtedly extensively planned. Jeffrey Epstein paid her $15,000 to perform sex acts on Prince Andrew per time, I think. Her second encounter was with Prince Andrew at Epstein's New York townhouse. Perhaps not the same occasion, where Peter Mandelson is placed there. And Peter Mandelson stayed there numerous times, even when he was Deputy Prime Minister. Virginia Giuffre said that she met him there, and we'll get into that. It was also reported in a New York magazine article from 2006, I think. Peter Mandelson had attended a dinner there, organised by Ghislaine Maxwell, and flooded with very young and barely clothed girls who were serving them and then taken off to private quarters by their, whatever. They describe him being at the house of Jeffrey Epstein at a party organised by Ghislaine Maxwell, attended by Donald Trump, Les Wexner, Sergey Brin, David Blaine, Jeffrey Epstein's house. The only person in that sentence that is called disgraced is Peter Mandelson.
What tickles me with these events, a light bit of levity in them, is that it's like, yeah, these are horrific gatherings of the most elite of society. It's like various politicians, even including prime ministers, presidents, their right-hand men, and then obviously like very influential figures in entertainment and how that can cross-pollinate with politics, tech millionaires. And then it's like the fat guy from Porn Stars, just for some reason, was also there as well. Just this complete, like, what the fuck was Blaine doing? It's always
Blaine.
some random.
Well, I mean, he was obviously up to no good. I mean, I don't doubt fucking Blaine was there so that he could fucking show Epstein some dumb bullshit. Jeffrey Epstein's also very stupid. He's a bit of a dude, bro. He probably saw some dumb fucking trick that David Blaine did and thought, oh, this could be the key to immortality.
I'm going to make this ID card with your real age disappear. But yeah, Jeffrey Epstein being kind of like a stupid arsehole. It's like you would hang out obviously with like the MIT scientists and other figures like that.
Yeah.
You got your Chomskys and your Marvin Minskys.
Like Chomsky written some all right stuff. He's shite in other areas. But what's the point of excusing him meeting Epstein? It's like, and wasn't fucking Woody Allen there that night? And he says that he was helping him get out of some fucking debt or some bullshit. It's like, why fucking possibly believe that? At best case scenario, he was privy to it.
And if you think about it, you know, having David Blaine there, having an illusionist there, it's not the worst idea. You know, you look at Michael Aquino, the allegation against him, and the kids talk about him being able to fly and stuff like that. You know, imagine if you got
baseball.
Yeah, like imagine if you got somebody accusing Jeffrey Epstein of all these horrible things that he did, but then also they say, "Oh yeah, but I also saw somebody there that could disappear." It's like it instantly tarnishes them, just like the weird decorations in his house. You know,
is that McMartin you were talking about there?
That was Aquino with Presidio.
There was the same thing with McMartin, I think. So a lot of these children would say that they had witnessed sort of supernatural phenomena by their abusers. So a lot of the things about Jimmy Savile suggested he engaged in some quasi-occult events or things that had at least the aesthetics of that. Like Dave says, it also immediately discredits the testimony of anyone who says it. It's like the Bill Murray thing. Whenever someone would come up to him, a fan, he would fuck with them or say something outrageous, disgusting. Then he would say, "No one will ever believe you," and he would walk away. And this is sort of the point. If I say I was molested by Jimmy Savile and he was wearing a black robe and he was slicing open the throat of a hen, you go, "No, you didn't." I don't doubt a person like Jeffrey Epstein who thinks he is cleverer than he is probably saw all kinds of daft methodology to making allegations that are consequent to what is happening sound ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, even like you mentioned Michael Aquino, obviously the audience can't see this, but if a child is asked to describe what this man looked like with his eyebrows turned all the way up, you add layers of ridiculousness of it. It just, I mean, it's kind of similar with that Franklin credit union thing where it's just when they throw in the sort of satanic panic shit or anything like that.
Michael Aquino is a binding thread of a lot of the American child sex trafficking things, if anyone who doesn't know about this. He's a very, as Jacob says, pantomime villain-looking man. He used to be quite senior in the US military, but PSYOPs, psychological warfare. He was a Satanist. He founded the Temple of Set. But he's also peripheral. The amount of things that he just ends up being mentioned in or he's involved in.
When Hope Not Hate confronted David Meyer in 1999, he mentioned Michael Aquino in that.
Yeah. And obviously Michael Aquino was strongly influenced by Aleister Crowley, the English occult founder of Thelema. Clearly, there is some intersection between the aesthetics, at the very least, of the occult being utilized in abuse. Virginia Giuffre's second encounter, as I said, was at his New York townhouse. Third was an orgy on Little St. James Island involving what she described as underage Eastern European girls, Andrew and Epstein himself. Repeated requests from Virginia Giuffre's lawyers to Prince Andrew for a statement under oath were declined. They couldn't serve the papers to him. They were trying constantly. They wouldn't accept them, none of the staff at the gates. Very difficult to physically serve a prince. They ran away from it for some years. I don't know if the group sex that she describes of the third encounter involved Ghislaine Maxwell, but Ghislaine Maxwell was also involved in the sexual abuse, sometimes in the group context. The royals just put out vague denials, but eventually they managed to serve Prince Andrew the papers through some scheme.
They served it through his lawyer, so a New York judge said that it could be served to his lawyer, and that's how they got it.
It says that the court summons and the complaint papers were sent both by email and FedEx, but they need evidence it has been delivered. They previously were unable to deliver it in person when her legal representatives or their assistants tried to deliver it at the gates. But because they FedExed it, they got a notification of delivery, which is sufficient for confirmation. And if he did not respond or cooperate, he would have lost by default. During that process, I believe it was civil in nature, not criminal. Andrew continually denied it until he settled. I think the same year, it was settled 2021. And the exact figure is also a point of speculation. It was at least 12 million, but I have heard a larger number. And ostensibly because of the way that Andrew's finances are, or the way that any royal's finances are, and the fact that Andrew fucking wanks through money, it came straight out of Queen Elizabeth II's bank account, which I don't doubt is bottomless, but it's nice that the British taxpayer gets to pay for some lady to be a trillionaire, which she then uses to pay off all the fucking sex crime victims of her son. Prince Andrew was Queen Elizabeth's favourite, head over heels adored. There's even an episode of The Crown about it that concludes with Philip asking the Queen who her favourite is, and she says she doesn't know. Philip says it's obvious to everyone. It's Andrew. I understand why Virginia Giuffre would settle out of court, because she got him to concede legally and bindingly that Epstein trafficked countless young girls over many years and that he regrets his association with him and commends the bravery of Miss Giuffre and other survivors in standing up for themselves and others, which is an interestingly worded statement, certainly, because Prince Andrew commends the bravery of Virginia Giuffre for standing up for herself against the abuse of Prince Andrew. Surely tacitly confirms from himself that he did it. It's couched in sort of opaque language. The Queen paid it because these people have no moral issue with child abuse. They don't think anything is wrong with it. Bill Gates, when he was divorcing from Melinda, she was leaking stories to the press. Bill Gates meeting Epstein after his conviction. People close to Melinda say that was one of the deciding factors in the divorce, and she's appalled by it. Bill Gates is quoted as saying that what Epstein did in his 2006 conviction was no worse than stealing a bagel. And I think that is how a lot of these elites view it, as, parking violation. Certainly not a moral stain, and certainly not grounds for not associating with the person. And you would hope that some of the more softer, kinder political entities would think differently, but evidently, Chomsky met him after that.
Oh, we did go full circle. Back to Chomsky and Epstein when he was caught in these MIT guys or whatever. That he is kind of stupid. It's like they'd be talking about whatever science bullshit they were into, whatever the topic was, and he'd be like, when are we going to talk about getting
transhumanist bullshit?
Yeah, and he goes, when are we going to talk about getting pussy or something like that? Just like a fucking moron.
That's what I mean by he was like a dude, bro. And if you listen to the way he talks, it's important that people do this. If you haven't heard how Jeffrey Epstein talks, it's very important that you listen to him. Because he's more revealing about the archetype of person he is than anything you will ever read. He hasn't got a particularly masculine voice. He sounds like a rat. Some dude, bro, who's always being incredibly sexually crass in front of you. Listen to Joe Rogan.
If Epstein wasn't killed, he would be a sort of Russell Brand type sort of
one of these people who is like...
He would absolutely get his little redemption and he becomes sort of like this character.
The woke left tried to destroy me.
Stitched me up. Yeah, Bill Clinton. Oh, God.
Russell Brand, specifically, he has been reporting about Epstein from the right-wing angle, the fiction angle. But also, Russell Brand is a campaigner for Donald Trump to be president. He's close personal friends with Bobby Kennedy Jr. Bobby Kennedy Jr., most blackmailable man alive, killed his wife. But also in the same journal, again, miraculously, the whole thing leaks to a Murdoch publication. I think it was the New York Post. He has catalogued all the times that he's been unfaithful to his wife. He describes it as getting mugged, and he rates it out of 10. It's just endless women. And if you are an international hostile state sex trafficking ring blackmail operation, and you hear that a Kennedy has sex addiction and he is also a junkie, there's your target. I don't know if that was all in the public domain when RFK Jr. was first introduced to Epstein. I imagine it goes back quite further, but obviously the security services will all know that. When RFK Jr. now is asked about it, he just explicitly lies. He says that he only met them twice, that his family were on the plane the whole time. All of these things are wrong. Many, many, many more times did they engage, and all of those times without his family. It's also important to note that before he ran for president, was sort of critical of Israel. And then on a dime, you can find videos of him during the presidential campaign where he is asked about Israel. He just becomes stony-faced, silent, looks like he's seen a ghost, and he doesn't have a sufficient answer at all because clearly the Mossad have compromising material on him. And not just the Mossad, the CIA as well, by the way. Whether or not he has been shown it directly or made privy to it directly, he knows that if he starts criticizing Israel, he can expect the New York Post to get a lot more than just that diary. The same court filing in 2014 is when Virginia Giuffre publicly discloses that Alan Dershowitz did abuse her. Dershowitz tried to get Virginia Giuffre's lawyers disbarred. That was the same month that Maria Farmer filed a supporting affidavit. She testified that she had regularly seen Dershowitz when underage girls were present. Alan Dershowitz maintains that the only times he was around the young girls, he thought they were adults, and his wife was there, and he kept his underpants on for the whole massage. Not even really strictly a denial.
It's a very Dershowitz type defense as well. That I don't think anyone else would ever fucking.
Yeah.
No, I kept my underpants on. It's okay.
Giuffre sued him for defamation. He countersued, and then Giuffre filed a defamation lawsuit against him in 2019 because he was doing media rounds saying that she's a liar. And again, out of the Dershowitz playbook, he tried to get her new lawyer disbarred and succeeded that time. Maria Farmer, previously mentioned, she filed the supporting affidavit saying that she had seen Dershowitz there. Giuffre and Farmer constitute the bulk of the knowledge of the system that they had grooming children, how they procured them, and the circumstances under which they were trafficked. There was a litany of civil and legal suits against Jeffrey Epstein from 2016 onwards. There was a federal lawsuit against him and Trump in 2016. There was a lawsuit against him and Maxwell in 2017. There was a defamation suit against him for denying it. There was Maria Farmer versus Epstein and Maxwell. Came consequent to the affidavit. There is literally about 8 different Jane Doe suits against him in 2019 alone. One of them has 9 anonymous women. That would suggest that that doesn't include Maria Farmer and Virginia Giuffre. Like I said before, there are a lot of accusers who are pursuing it criminally or civilly, but anonymously. Not to say that those women are not brave. They are also very brave. But it sort of accentuates why Virginia Giuffre is such a brave person. To make herself the face of this, to bind her life to it, to do it publicly under her legal name, with her face, with her voice, on television, on the internet, across these litany of suits in 2018, 2019. And in July 2019, he was found in prison seemingly unconscious, with marks around his neck. The people who were reviewing the CCTV were ostensibly asleep, and he had hung himself by bulking up sheets that, because he was in a maximum security prison on suicide watch, were thinner than...
Literally made out of paper, yeah. And the only way he could have done it realistically was to kneel. I can't remember the name of the bone or whatever it is in his neck that he somehow managed to break by kneeling forward. For the listeners at home, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to hang yourselves, but I can say from experience, it's not an easy thing to do, and it's very difficult to lean forward with such... Even when you're really desperate to lean forward with such might to snap your own fucking neck with single-ply toilet paper nooses.
hanging yourself is more difficult than you think. Usually, obviously,
surprisingly painful.
Yeah, it involves breaking bone in your neck to basically...
Even just the choking.
Yeah, there's a psychological barrier that wants you to prevent you from doing that. But that's why people drown themselves. Because choking, no matter how suicidal you are, you get to a certain point, you will almost automatically, innately, if it is within your power, stop choking yourself. It's like trying to bite off your own finger. There is a psychological barrier to it. But he managed to do it with this single-ply toilet paper. There are photos of the scene inside his prison. And ostensibly, it is not possible to break the specific bone.
It can only be done with someone else's hand.
Yeah. Jeffrey Epstein has a brother who controls his estate now. They have some people who are variously employing different professionals to look at it, to investigate whether he killed himself. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Individuals who had seen the scene in its less disturbed state said that it had appeared staged. He has 2 bed sheets that are as thick as single-ply toilet paper, and he managed to create from that a ligature or noose to snap his neck off while hanging it from the bunk bed. Obviously, he didn't fucking do that himself. Guards who were working...
What if he's just the suicide equivalent of like Tony Stark when he was in that cave and he made the fucking... he made the perfect noose out of
Never seen it. Don't watch movies for kids, mate. Sorry.
How did he do it? It was genius.
Never seen it, mate. Don't get it. Jeffrey Epstein definitely watched Iron Man. Isn't Elon Musk in Iron Man 2?
Yeah,
Isn't there a scene at Elon Musk's
He's got
house?
a 2-second cameo, and even then...
Can you imagine? It would have been fucking crazy if that Iron Man 2 cameo was at Jeffrey Epstein's house. It's Jeffrey Epstein speaking. Because I assume that the Elon Musk cameo is one of those things where famous people pay to have these fawning cameos. And
he even tries to do it with the Cyberpunk game where he like rocked up when he was like being epic. It's like, I've got my flintlock, put me in the game because I'm fucking cool, man. And
that's what Jeffrey Epstein should have pitched himself as. He should have been the
epic meme guy.
The epic Reddit guy, you know, and he probably would have, he'd be alive right now. On that topic, I would like to mention to anyone who doesn't know that ostensibly there's been a long-running speculation on Reddit that a early Reddit power user was Ghislaine Maxwell. They posted all the time. I believe they were the first person to get a million karma on Reddit. They were a moderator on all of the top subreddits. Their username...
Maxwell Hill.
They posted every day in all these subreddits. They were extremely prolific, and they stopped posting the day that Ghislaine Maxwell is arrested.
Sorry. One of the most infamous sex traffickers and pedophiles was a Reddit power user. I knew she was on Reddit. I'd forgotten the little detail that she was one of her power users. It reminds me early on in Reddit's history as well, before it became like a huge sort of the mainstream app that it is now. When they were doing like heat maps of like where all the users were, the biggest like concentration was at this American Air Force base. But it's like known for also having a sort of a division of online cyber warfare or whatever. They were all there.
And it'll be the same with 77th Brigade here. Ghislaine Maxwell got about, obviously she was just a socialite as well, independent of Jeffrey Epstein and her father and whatever else. But she was also friends with the very controversial among Redditors, Ellen Powell. And I think they had some involvement in some companies together. One of the other things they cited as proof of Ghislaine Maxwell being the owner of that account is that they were posting about some of these dog shit fucking environmental NGOs that Ghislaine started. Ghislaine was friends with Ellen Powell, and Ellen Powell was hated by all the fucking Redditors because she was the one who, while CEO, shut down all those horrific
the jailbait subreddit.
17 days after Epstein was killed in prison, Richard Berman, senior judge for the Southern District of New York, invited Epstein's victims to speak publicly at a hearing. 16 women spoke that day at the hearing. And Virginia Giuffre said, "The reckoning must not end, must continue. He did not act alone. We, the victims, know that." And this is a common refrain on this show because we say it about Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile was the tip of an iceberg, and we never got to learn and will never get to learn how deep it went. A lot of those victims said in both Savile and Epstein that there were other people there. other people involved. We know Epstein associated with certain big names, but he will have also associated with a lot of people that we don't know. The famous Contacts book, I believe, is from the 2000s, though released later, and even later than the uncensored version. I believe is actually Ghislaine's Contact book. Jeffrey Epstein did a lot more child sex trafficking in the interceding years after that. There will be a lot of people, although they were very close, who were involved in these type of things, who escape Ghislaine Maxwell's phone book. And there's probably a lot of people who are smiling to themselves because there'll be a lot of people who were never reported. An Epstein list doesn't exist. It's important to point that out, that Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking children. He didn't have his paper on his fridge that said people I traffic children to, and then an alphabetic list of them. The only thing close to that were the seized discs with the names. I don't believe that they know where those are anymore, and they're almost certainly destroyed. The carrot and the stick, constant promising of revealing the Epstein list. And you see it on Twitter, you see right-wing people replying to everything, no matter fucking what it is. Could be any random, irrelevant news story, and they say, when are you going to reveal the Epstein list? Well, it doesn't exist. The victims know that, as Virginia Giuffre says. He did not act alone. And we know some of the people with whom he acted. We know the blockbuster names. We know the Prince Andrew. We know Alan Dershowitz. But it doesn't end there. We now arrive at yet another suspicious death of an accuser. Obviously, the Kevin Spacey's legal troubles are characterised by half a dozen accusers dying. There's always some dodgy circumstances involved. It's one of the greatest horrors of our time, but it's also laughable because you would have to be insane to believe the mainstream media's explanation of all of this. And Virginia Giuffre, some 5 years ago, tweeted that she is not suicidal and she's not going to kill herself. And I think possibly her family have said there were changes in her mental state, especially after getting hit by that bus. I don't even necessarily think they killed her and made it look like a suicide. I think it's also eminently possible that they just agitated around her in the fourth dimension to make her life worse, unlivable, put her in a car crash, physically incapacitate her, make sure she's in agony, make sure she's miserable, and leave her at a point where she is so desolate and so emotionally broken that she kills herself.
Yeah, they don't have to shoot her. They can just leave the gun next to her bedside table. I mean, she lost custody of her children.
Yeah.
And that is going to be devastating.
A woman who has suffered as much as Virginia Giuffre, who has been abused at the hands of countless people that she trusted, of people that she loved, of people who were in her family, of people who repeatedly offered a respite. These were important personal figures to her. And then very quickly, she is trafficked to the elite of the elite, the most senior, powerful people on the face of the earth. And she sees firsthand their network of grooming children and then getting their victims to procure more victims. She knows it. She sees it in her mind's eye viscerally at every moment. And to lose custody of your children is to mean that you can no longer ensure that that doesn't happen to them. And every waking moment where they are not in your custody will be horror, because you will be unable to escape even the hypothetical prospect that something like what happened to you might happen to them. She's lived in a world that, although changed for the better by her, people like this are still out there. Peter Mandelson is the British ambassador to the US. Donald Trump is the president. These people are completely untouched by it.
And more powerful than ever. With an Epstein or even a Dershowitz, like these guys are, like you say, the bagmen of the middlemen. And in a sort of true detective style sense, they are set to fall. When the walls close in, when they're no longer as useful as they once were, they can be offed, have the blame pinned on them, because they were always too stupid to ever realize their position in the game. And on top of what you said of like where these figures are right now, even what was revealed, again, like you said, it was worth doing. It was genuinely noble, quite a heroic sacrifice. What did a significant amount of Americans do, for instance? They turned it into another culture war battle, but also just another way to sell consumer tar. They can put Epstein didn't kill himself on a t-shirt and make merchandise out of it. Turn it into another epic meme.
That in itself, is that not an atrocity?
It's disgusting.
And the world failed her. We didn't deserve her. she had selflessness like no one else, and we responded by turning this final and definitive confirmation of these grave sexual abuses of power metastasizing through the upper echelons of every nation on earth. And she knew that when she revealed that, she was ruining her life at the very least. And we responded with cry laughing emojis. We turned it into a joke. Obviously, it's a coping mechanism for people because it's such a horrible schizophrenic sequence of events, the people who are involved, the way that it transpires and the way that it operates. It's maddening because if you were to reckon with it properly, you have to think this is the greatest evil that I could possibly imagine. Although the world is better for the things that she did. We failed, and the media failed, and society failed in not taking her seriously enough. The fact that her name isn't a household name, the fact that people don't know her testimony off by heart is enough proof that people didn't take it seriously. In an idyllic, perfect world, they would have implemented every word of recommendation she made. And through her foundation, she campaigned for all sorts of changes. But broadly, she wasn't listened to. Sad truth is, even though they killed her, or worsened her life such that she felt she had to take it herself, I don't think people will listen to her now. And I think people will just forget her name. But hopefully not. I am hoping with my entire core that that is not the case and that people do listen to her. It is a tragedy the way the media has treated this, the way that they've turned it into tabloid fodder, the way they have sensationalized and bastardized and obfuscated the truth, and also the way that they've exploited her, like, for instance, Russell Brand, who is clearly just trying to create the parallel narrative, Trump and RFK are not involved, in exchange for either them throwing about some political weight with the CPS over here, or...
It is the rapist's White House more than, yeah.
Or squashing the US cases, even the civil ones, or pardoning him, or commuting him, or possibly not extraditing him. Clearly someone has fucking got compromising material on him. The Mossad could blackmail Russell Brand with things that he did and were aired on television.
Yeah.
His private behaviour, doubtless much worse, but his public behaviour, also a lot of it constituted sex crimes. So clearly someone's fucking blackmailing him. This is how it births. It's the circle of nonce-life. It's the way that all of these things, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and then from there, suddenly you've got disgraced pervert, born-again Christian Russell Brand laying down their version of events that completely exonerates them. And we all laugh and say, obviously that's not true because Russell Brand's saying it. And I believe that the proportion of even the American right that believe him will be small. It is a game of telephone. And Russell Brand will say it. And Tucker Carlson listens to Russell Brand. Tucker Carlson will start repeating it. And there is also gaining some steam on the American right is an interpretation that Jeffrey Epstein is actually based and that he wasn't a paedophile. He was a ebiphile, whatever the fuck they call it.
Featherphile.
Yeah. And that effectively these young, almost legal girls were gold diggers. And that is something that is said with quasi-irony, but often with some great sincerity on the American right online, where they talk about Epstein as being depicted as almost a Jimmy Savile figure when he was more of a Leonardo DiCaprio, which is laughably absurd, but you can see that they are trialing out a bunch of different cultural framings for this.
Yeah, there's definitely been a project over the past few years, again, as part of an increasingly degenerating, depraved world ran by the most fucking disgusting subhuman filth to ever crawl it. Through layers of irony and obfuscating it through terrible fucking jokes and humor is to create this next level of like a rape culture and a new level of misogyny and pro-pedophilia, febophilia, whatever you want to call it. And it's been building off of over the past few years of just sort of normalizing this and then maybe reaching a point of compromise where the extreme end is just the pure, most obscene jokes. But now we've reached a point where the middle ground of sort of like, well, you should be able to say rape your wife. It's not, it's not actually rape. She married you. She agreed to this. It's sort of building this new world of just normalizing this level of abuse through this kind of... It's fucking horrific, man. I can't even articulate it sometimes. It sickens me so much.
The cultural boundaries of what is acceptable in public discourse it ebbs and flows. It is action, reaction, and previously, during the early 2000s, mid 2000s, edgy comedy. Like every single comedian, every single comedy show is just a guy saying, I've raped a baby. Just the worst hypersexual violence. And it became quite hack. But also the word retard. These things became less socially acceptable because they kept ramming it in your face. And it made too many people stop and think about it and realize, maybe this is not okay. But now the right claims that we are in a new dawn and that they can say all these things now. You can see in real time that this is having a reaction where people who would say edgy things or talk about retards or I'm going to rape you or we should be allowed to rape our wives or that is alienating people.
Yeah, they've kind of revealed their hand too much, I think, in terms of like the society that they want. I think there's definitely a sort of generational decline in terms of like this right-wing project where, sure, it is ascendant and dominant. The proponents of it with each generation seem to get genuinely more stupid. They're more reckless, arrogant, hubristic, and they can't really keep the game up in a sophisticated way anymore. So you just see how they post on Twitter. It's just, it's so disgusting and so alienating. In a way that like the tact that they might have employed in a mainstream sense in like the 80s and 90s, as evil as it still was, there was a layer of normalcy though, which just doesn't exist anymore. And everyone can look at this and think, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? We're living in Salem now.
The culture that is manufactured in that way, that the societal norms around language, it's not by accident. It's always it's a hack thing on Twitter. It says, stop normalizing things or whatever, like as if we have the power individually to do that. It doesn't make any sense. Norms are disseminated, not all the time, but sometimes with express purpose. And it's supposed to crescendo through different tiers of cultural expression, then comedy, and then that is repeated by the people who view it, whatever else. But the effect is that it normalizes or desensitizes you to these ideas and these things. I'm not fucking scolding anyone. I don't scold anyone for saying anything. I don't say the word retard because, I know a lot of, and have known a lot of different people with quite severe complex health needs. My mum worked in disabilities all her life. I've known and know a lot of people. And personally, I can't square that with my conscience. And I don't make fucking rape jokes because a lot of people I love and have loved in my life have had their lives torn apart by rape or child sexual abuse or whatever else. And I also can't square that with my conscience. I'm not going to fucking scold anyone for saying anything at all, unless you're a right-wing person who is saying with malice to try and hurt people who have already suffered so greatly. Even if you do say these naughty words and say these naughty sentiments, it's important that you be aware that you are contributing to something, even in an infinitesimal way, that I don't think you agree with. Did you want to say anything concluding about Virginia Giuffre, Dev?
So, whether or not Virginia Giuffre did commit suicide, or whether or not the people that trafficked her killed her, no, that just like Epstein, be debated for years to come. But for years, Giuffre, she fought against predators and a system designed to protect the powerful people that abused her. She was called a liar, harassed by the most powerful lawyers on the planet, and abandoned by the institutions that are supposed to protect her.
Yeah.
And now that she's dead, the men that abused her are going to breathe easier. And the networks that trafficked her are untouched. They'll change and morph to fit what they need to fit. And the dark reality of it is nobody's going to do anything about it.
Yeah. And I think we've seen that time and time again. And that is not to say her revealing this and her testifying about this was fruitless or pointless or anything of the sort. The contributions she has made to the global understanding of these things cannot possibly be quantified. As I've said many times, the world we live in is better for her having been in it, worse without her in it. Unfortunately, in a lot of these cases, the dice is loaded.
I don't think her story or any story like this was ever going to start or end so neatly and conclusively. And I think she was probably aware of that, and that was part of the sacrifice, knowing that however long she would continue to live, it probably wasn't going to end with her. This is systemic abuse that encompasses superstructures beyond our control, but also, again, part of patriarchal systems of genuine oppression and abuse of women going back fucking centuries. This isn't something that can be wrapped up so neatly. And it's easy to feel, and I don't blame anyone. I mean, I fucking do. The cynicism, the ugliness, and the grotesquerie of this moment that we're in right now. And again, how suffering and the crimes of guys like Epstein can be distilled and reduced down to stupid fucking memes and shitty t-shirts. But I think an important thing to do is you can feel that cynicism, but you can also let it fuel you. Righteous anger and hatred. You owe it to her, and you owe it to all of these other victims to keep fighting, to keep talking about it, to think about what you actually should do next. Because, yeah, those rapist bastards and monsters are in charge. They mostly got away with it. So the question is, what are you going to do about it?
And I think righteous anger, she sort of epitomised it.
Yeah.
Female victims of any kind of abuse are often dismissed. And she was dismissed. And dismissed on a massive scale as well. Even if eventually the media, in wake of the Prince Andrew interview, became significantly more sympathetic to her testimony being true, even then, there is still a cohort of people on the internet. Is it state actor agitators? Is it a fucking bot farm? Is it 77th Brigade? Who knows? It still exists. There are a lot of people, if you are a Virginia Giuffre figure who has testified against a powerful person, regardless, if you had concrete proof of them doing it, if you had 4K footage of them doing it, if you had tape of them admitting it, there will always be a contingent of people who will say that you are lying. Because in society, a growing cohort of people, parallel to the Andrew Tate misogynists and the incels, whatever else, whose entire life is defined by defending people who are accused of sex crimes, to confirm their prejudicial view that women are liars. Obviously, false accusations of rape, of sexual assault happen in such an incredibly tiny and infrequent number. I think I've said this before. It's closer to the truth to say nobody has ever lied about someone raping them than it is to say that there is a mass of fictional allegations being levied against people. But there is nonetheless a sizable group of people on the internet, and if you are a Virginia Giuffre figure, you will encounter it. You will encounter comments on your Instagram, on your Twitter, on whatever else, calling you a whore, calling you a liar, just parroting line after line after line. Especially since the blockbuster allegation is against Prince Andrew. The royals and the royal houses have quite extensive online operations. You can see it with regards to Kate Middleton versus Meghan Markle. Prince William and Kate Middleton clearly have some kind of, it's not a bot farm, it's not being done automatically. Clearly there are some people who manage multiple accounts on there, and they just, it's like tweet decking, if you remember that. People would steal tweets, and they would have these little networks of accounts with X amount of followers, and they would just send it to each other, recycling tweets, and bump them larger. The Saudis do it. Something like over 90% of people in Saudi Arabia use Twitter. So to influence conversation, they have people who are managing 10 Twitter accounts apiece to manufacture discourse that is positive to whomever is employing them. And the royals do this. It's some of the weirdest corners of Twitter you'll see, but there is a large cohort of people who are infatuated with Kate Middleton and Prince William, and they all share the same bullshit about Meghan Markle all the time. And there's no way that those people exist in that quantity. So the point being, if the royals can do that to manufacture the positive image of one of their own, they can also do that to manufacture the negative image of someone who threatens their public standing. And if you have Virginia Giuffre, you encounter that probably on a daily basis.
And I think even witnessing it, I think we can all agree there's a lot of people, more than ever in human history, even relatively speaking, that need to die. I think it's also important to keep in mind that, yeah, so much of that evil you see now more than ever isn't real. Plenty of them exist, but it's inflated quite wildly.
Yeah, not that the evil as a concept isn't real, but the advocacy of it on the internet.
And that those characters aren't out there, those fucking scum, but they are wildly inflated through these mechanisms.
Yeah.
They're boosted artificially even. There's so many ways to rig the game to make things seem worse than they actually
There's
are.
a means of manufacturing a culture where those things are not acceptable, but at least you are aware that it is a strain of thought. Because previously, were the Twitter algorithm not the way it is, were there not so many state actors, rich people exploiting social media to manufacture positive or negative stories, much like they do with the press? If it weren't that way, you would assume that advocates for the legalization of rape don't exist. It's quite likely that you would have never heard anything like that in your life because it's such low-hanging moral fruit. The right-wingers, all these people historically love to say how much they hate pedos. The picture that goes around of those bullets and they write fuck pedos on it or whatever. Like they're going to shoot them dead or something.
Let's get them in the wood chipper and all that shit.
It is literally virtue signaling when it is so consensus that it is an act of moral deprivation and great evil. You are very unlikely to encounter someone advocating that. But now, because of Elon Musk owning Twitter, the cascading effect onto other social media, laxing their moderation policies, alternating their algorithms to amplify right-wing voices, a lot of these accounts are run not necessarily even by a state, but by some hostile actor with an intention. The intention is not to turn everyone into a rape advocate. It is to put in your subconscious, when you are thinking about other things, that as a strand of thought exists and that some people advocate for that. And that in and of itself is normalizing it.
It's to demoralize and it's to scare you off.
Yeah.
If you are another victim of abuse like this and you see this as the kind of response that it gets now, are you likely to speak out? Like, it's a lot scary if you think there's so many people out there who would hurt me for this more than there were 10 years ago.
And if you see a laughably suspicious death like Virginia Giuffre, don't get me wrong, it genuinely does break my heart. It makes me really, really sad. It is laughably absurd. And if you are a victim of some powerful person who has abused you, and you see the way that Virginia Giuffre was treated, the response to it in many ways, you would be disincentivized about coming forward. If you see a death like this, it's so absurd in character that the intention is that you are suspicious of it and you are conspiratorial about it. That is the intention, whether they killed her and made it look like a suicide or not, or whether they drove her to suicide.
It's the same thing.
To make a very, very specific message to a very, very specific audience. It's like in those Kevin Spacey videos that he used to make on Christmas Eve when he holds up the
fucking coffee mug.
The mug with the Queen's coronation thing on. That is from when he went to Buckingham Palace with Ghislaine Maxwell. And this, like that, is a coded message. The coded message being, if you've been abused by anyone who is even peripherally involved with any of these people, and that encompasses probably the vast majority of all politicians, of entertainers, of every sector, then they are telling you to shut the fuck up or we'll kill you. And that is very, very grim, horrendous to think about. And we're going to do this in two parts. We will go into how this intersects with Peter Mandelson in the next episode. But to close this, I would just like to reiterate that it is the official opinion of three useless, dull-dossing scum like us that Virginia Giuffre is a hero and that what she did was singularly brave. And we are thankful we haven't been trafficked, suffered anything remotely like that. In so many different ways, she is one of the extremely few single-digit examples of people directly taking on the cabal of bloodthirsty war profiteer, financier, entertainment overlord, tech fucking founder, Peter Thiel, venture capital perverts. I struggle to think of another example of someone who has done it as this directly in their own name in the public eye for at least 10 years of it. And I wouldn't do it. I'd be fucking terrified. And she explicitly said on numerous times, hence her saying some years ago that she's not suicidal, that it was likely that something like this could happen. And that is also because outside of the main event, she will have seen people following her, tracking her, slowly infecting what she thought was her new, safe life in a different part of the world. Whether they killed her or not, they destroyed the safety of what was her sanctuary life from all of the abuse of her youth. And she sacrificed more than any of the cunts on the internet who are, cracking wise or who are even just dismissive of it. We live in a very patriarchal, abusive society, and women are dismissed for everything. If a woman goes to a doctor, the doctor just says, no, that's not happening. Women accusers are dismissed constantly in this country. There is a laughable amount of sex crime prosecutions per year, like an incredibly tiny percentage of the amount reported, and an even smaller percentage of successful prosecutions. It's just not taken seriously. She showed more resolve, bravery, courage than any of these utter scum.
And it doesn't stop with her. It doesn't have to stop with her.
It doesn't have to stop with her. There will be others inspired by the things that she did. To close this, I would just like to say thank you, Virginia Giuffre. No matter what happened to you, no matter who is at fault, explicitly or implicitly, I hope wherever she is, she feels glad that she's not in the same place as them. On that note, I think that is how we will end this episode. We will continue and speak about Peter Mandelson and his intersection with this in the next episode. Sorry for it being a morbid discussion. I know these things are tough. I know there weren't a great many jokes, but it's something serious and it's something that we do care about. I think it required a requisite amount of seriousness to address. Because if we were sat and strong-arming jokes into this every 2 minutes, then we're just guilty of the exact thing we're critiquing. I am your host, Eyup Lovely from the internet, and I have been joined by the hapless homo, Jacob Venom Snake. Jacob, please say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
And fan favourite co-host,
Fuck off.
Dave number 7. Dave, please say goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.